At this time, I call to order the regular meeting of the Maricopa County Community College District Governing Board for February 26, 2019. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Lauren Autry, a student at Estrella Mountain Community College.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have some substitutions this evening. Dr. Jana Swartz for Dr. Paul Dale, Dr. Heather Weber for Dr. Ernie Lara, and Dr. Klein Namuo for Dr. Sherry Olson. Now moving to student life reports, presenting on behalf of students at Estrella Mountain Community College is Lauren Autry and Jalen Cooper.
President Thor, members of the board, Dr. Maria Harper-Marinick, members of the Cgcc, and guests, good evening. My name is Lauren Autry, and I'm a biology major at Estrella Mountain Community College, and I also serve as a student ambassador at the Office of Student Life and Leadership. With me today is fellow ambassador Jalen Cooper. Student Life and Leadership. The Office of Student Life and Leadership provides an environment which fosters the social, academic, and professional growth with development of the student. Student Life and Leadership is housed in the EMCC Student Union, a central hub for students on campus. We serve over 600 students, faculty, and community members on a weekly basis. We offer a variety of resources and services at the Student Union. These include campus tours, the Student Food Pantry, discounted bus passes, the Lions Exchange Boutique, campus-managed posting boards, leadership development, childcare assistance, student retention programs, as well as clubs and organizations. The Lions Exchange Boutique was opened in January of 2018. The boutique provides gently used clothing at no cost for EMCC students. Students, along with faculty and staff, are encouraged to donate clothing items to support students as they pursue their academic and professional goals. Students can use the exchange twice per month and take 4 items of clothing each visit. Students often utilize this resource to gain professional attire to wear for their job interviews. The Student Food Pantry was opened in 2014 and is also housed in the Student Union. During the 2018 through 2019 school year, there has been a dramatic increase in number of students visiting the Student Food Pantry. 400 students used the pantry during the fall 2018 semester, and so far this semester we've had over 200 visits. Along with these resources, EMCC currently has over 20 active clubs and organizations. Student clubs and orgs have sponsored over 60 campus-based programs and community service-based programs this academic school year. Jalen Cooper will now further discuss events held by our clubs and organizations.
Hi everyone, I'm Jalen Cooper. I'd like to talk to you about clubs and orgs events. Some events to note are Domestic Violence Awareness Month events, Welcome Week, Holiday Helping Hands, Prom Dress Extravaganza, Small Business Expo, Mental Health Awareness Tabling, and Engineering Career Panel. Many clubs and orgs volunteer and collaborate in the fall and participate in the Veterans Fun Run, Holiday Reception, and the 9/11 Flag Memorial. They also volunteer to support the various Heritage Month events. I will now talk about past programs and events. Past programs and events were Welcome Week, 5 Weeks of Champions, Student Appreciation Day, Holiday Reception, and the Christmas Angel Drive, Native American Cultural Dance, MLK Luncheon, Cesar Chavez Luncheon, and a 9/11 memorial presentation. We also have Coffee Talk. Over coffee and donuts, students are able to engage the EMCC president, vice presidents, and deans about student issues, ideas, and concerns. Featured on the EMCC website are transcripts of previous coffee talks, action items for students to review and access at any time. As you can see, we had Coffee Talk November 9th and December 7th. You can click on the action items and see what's been done so far. Upcoming campus events, Coffee Talk, April 6th and March 28th. Student Success Fair, which was today and tomorrow. Alternative Spring Break, which is March 11th through the 13th. Student Appreciation Day, April 24th. Week of Champions, May 6th and through the 10th. Clubs and Orgs Banquet, which is April 19th. In March, Student Life will be collaborating with Service Learning to facilitate EMCC's 4th Alternative Spring Break. Instead of going out partying for spring break, students are choosing to make a positive difference in the community. Through March 11th through the 13th, EMCC students will be at Tres Rios Wetlands, removing litter, repairing outreach for nesting eagles, and documenting plant and animal species. Also, what EMCC provides is fitness and wellness. Live well, be well, learn well. Health habits are correlated with better academic performances. At Estrella, we have wellness in the classroom, collaboration with faculty, infuses healthy habit goal setting in the classroom. With nursing, student community health screening provides free cholesterol, glucose, blood pressure, and BMI screening. Also under the fitness and wellness, we hold an annual substance use disorder awareness event. It also connects students with resources through 211 Arizona. Also, EMCC's athletics, the 2018 EMCC men's and women's cross country team had 4 members selected to the NGCAA cross country All-American team. The individual NJCAA academic All-Americans include Brian, Julio, Erica, and Mercedes. That concludes our presentation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. That was very comprehensive and impressive. Do members of the board have comments or questions for us, the Estrella Mountain students? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have the Faculty Executive Council report. Mr. Champel, do you have anything to report?
I do. Thank you. So good evening, President Thor, members of the board, Chancellor, CEC, fellow faculty, staff, and guests. My name is John Champel. I'm in my 13th year as residential faculty at Phoenix College, where I teach students in biology. I'm also the currently elected president of the Faculty Executive Council, FEC, the official representative body of the residential faculty of the Maricopa Community Colleges. I am delighted to have the opportunity to speak to you this evening. First, I would like to congratulate and to genuinely thank this board for passing agenda item 7.1 at the last regular board meeting on January 22nd. The board's 5-1 vote on this item was a pivotal move forward for the district, as was clearly evidenced by the sustained standing ovation it received in a packed Rio Conference Center immediately following its approval. It reaffirmed long-established and effective board policies that recognize both Higher Learning Commission accreditation standards and Association of Governing Board best practices in board governance. The approved measure includes a renewed declaration that the board will govern in a manner that is nonpartisan, with its emphasis on integrity and truthfulness in all of its activities and practices, collective rather than individual decisions, encouragement of diversity in viewpoints, and lastly, an explicit understanding of the inherent bedrock value of shared governance in institutional decision-making. On the subject of renewed shared governance, the Faculty Executive Council leadership has now begun re-engaging with district administrative leadership on multiple fronts. Since January's board meeting, we have twice met with COO Elliot Hibbs, Provost Carla Fisher, and leaders from both business services and human resources to coordinate faculty contributions to budget formulation, as well as addressing of persistent and lingering issues with employee pay and other HR areas where faculty input and expertise is critical for lasting solutions. Provost Carla Fisher and CIO Mark Cohn have also individually reached out to formally reestablish prior connections with their areas and the Faculty Executive Council. I also attended my first Chancellor's Executive Council meeting last Wednesday. While unfortunately the Chancellor was not in attendance, she did send me an email welcoming me and FEC leadership back into the Chancellor Executive Council discussions, and we're delighted to be there. Overall, I am encouraged, and I would actually say I'm thoroughly convinced that if we genuinely build upon this renewed governing board commitment to shared governance, the fruits of those efforts will lead to greater effectiveness and efficiencies in our service to students and ultimately result in students' increased success at our colleges. The board action on January 22nd also established the Faculty Administration Collaboration Team, otherwise known as FACT. FACT members update the Faculty Executive Council weekly, and I share these updates with all residential faculty with an open invitation to provide feedback to me, their FEC representatives, and members of the team. To date, the faculty members serving on FACT are doing what I would characterize as an exemplary job of listening to and responding to the voluminous feedback they're receiving. From the faculty perspective, it is our hope that FACT process and products will reaffirm the core principles we have historically developed in collaboration with administration at MCCD over the years, while also aligning FACT's new policies and practices with the value we place on our adjunct faculty. With that, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Champel. Now the Adjunct Faculty Association. Mr. Roddy, do you have anything to report?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. President Thor, members of the board, Dr. Harper-Marinick, members of the Cgcc, and guests. My name is Patrick Roddy. I'm an adjunct faculty member at Scottsdale Community College in motion picture and television, and I'm also the president of the Adjunct Faculty Association of Maricopa Community Colleges. This last month, the Adjunct Faculty Association continued its collaboration with MCLI in producing two of our signature programs this coming semester. The Learning and Engagement for Adjunct Development Conference, better known as LEAD, which will occur on Friday, March 29th at Gateway Community College, and the Outstanding Adjunct Faculty Awards, which will be held on Thursday, April 18th at Rio Salado College. On behalf of the AFA and MCLI, I would like to extend an invitation to the governing board for both events, and we look forward to seeing you there. I would also like to take a quick moment to recognize the efforts of our AFA Education Committee Chair, Stephanie West of Scottsdale Community College, and her committee in organizing the LEAD conference. And I'd also like to recognize our AFA Awards Committee Chair, Roxanne Beckstrom Sternberg of Gateway Community College, and her committee in organizing the Outstanding Adjunct Faculty Awards thus far. We appreciate their hard work and commitment to providing development opportunities for adjunct faculty, as well as recognizing adjunct faculty achievements. Last month, the governing board passed a resolution for the creation of the Faculty Administration Collaboration Team, also known as FACT. In that time, both Gail Haas and myself, as members of the team, have been updating the Adjunct Faculty Association board on the process, and in turn, the AFA board has provided essential feedback on the issues identified up to this point. The AFA board has also given their support, and they welcome the inclusion of adjunct faculty in the process. The Adjunct Faculty Association recently conducted our annual survey, and in closing tonight, I thought I would share a few statistics that speak to the talents and abilities of our adjunct faculty as they continue to impact student success here at Maricopa Community Colleges. 20% of our adjunct faculty have terminal degrees. 33% of our adjunct faculty have full-time teaching experience in higher education prior to coming to Maricopa. 75% of our adjunct faculty have 5 or more years of teaching experience in higher education. And finally, when asked, what is their primary motivation for being an adjunct? 45%, the number one reason, said it was for the love of teaching. I believe these results paint a picture of highly credentialed, experienced, and engaged adjunct faculty in the pursuit of student success. and a valuable part of the instruction team at Maricopa Community Colleges. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Roddy. We have one Emeritus Distinction Award this evening. Dr. Peterson, would you like to introduce your honoree?
President Thor, if I may invite Dr. Guerrero to come forward.
Thank you, Dr. Guerrero.
President Thor, members of the Governing Board, Chancellor Harper-Marinick, members of the CEC, and guests. It is my honor this evening to present Cgcc faculty member Cynthia Bingham, who has been recommended for emeritus status. Cynthia, would you join me at the podium, please? Cynthia came to Chandler Gilbert as a full-time Spanish faculty in fall of 1990. Her dedication to students and her subject went far beyond the classroom to college, district, and community service, as well as international education and travel. In 1993, Cynthia co-founded the chapter of Sigma Delta Mu, the National Spanish Honor Society, with Cgcc faculty emeritus Dr. Ana Jarvis. And Cynthia was chapter advisor for 7 years, and in 1998 became National Executive Secretary Treasurer and continues in this capacity today. Cynthia's interest in international and intercultural education was exemplified by her co-hosting many annual foreign language nights with Dr. Jarvis. These events thrilled audiences with professional flamenco dancers, ethnic food, and student skits. Cynthia chaired Cgcc's International Intercultural Education Committee for many years and procured grant funds to install world maps in classrooms and to host events and festivals highlighting cultures from around the globe. Cynthia also represented Chandler Gilbert on the Maricopa International Intercultural Education Committee. She established a Spanish Study Abroad program in Costa Rica for Maricopa students, and in 1994 began organizing and hosting international cultural awareness trips, which eventually expanded to all 7 continents. Many Maricopa students, faculty, and staff participated in these trips, including the late Dr. Don Campbell, a Maricopa District Governing Board member, and his wife. In addition to all this, Cynthia promoted world languages at Cgcc by designing the department webpage and serving as the college's dual enrollment supervisor for Spanish and a host of other languages. She was advisor to the Chandler Gilbert Latter-day Saints Students Association and a multi-year member of the Faculty Senate, including 2 years as treasurer. Her service encompassed the District Diversity Committee and Languages Articulation Task Force, as well as Chandler Gilbert's Institutional Effectiveness, Global and Civic Engagement, Student Learning Outcomes Assessment Committees. We do wish Cynthia all the best in retirement and will miss her many contributions to the college and the Maricopa District, and above all, its students. Bon voyage, Cynthia, and vaya con Dios. Would you like to address the board?
Okay, I was told that I was supposed to give a few words, so I prepared a little something. I'm sorry that every year, about this time of year, I lose my voice. I don't know why. I guess when the weather cools off. I hope you can understand me. Good evening. I would like to start by thanking President Greg Peterson, Dr. Bill Guerriero, President Linda Thor, members of the Governing Board, Dr. Maria Harper-Marinick, members of the Chancellor's Executive Council, guests, my special colleague and loyal friend Carol Terrell, my good husband Ken, and my 4 dear children and their spouses, and my 9 precious grandchildren who are present this evening. It is a privilege to be here. I feel very honored to have been chosen to receive this emeritus distinction. When I was asked to say a few words tonight, I decided to share how I came to learn about Chandler Gilbert Community College. At the time, I did not even know that the campus existed. I had never heard the name before. I graduated with my master's in Spanish language and culture from Arizona State University the summer of 1990. I called Mesa Community College and left a voicemail with the foreign language chair wanting to know if he had a Spanish class available that I could teach that fall. I never heard back from him, so I called a friend of mine at ASU in charge of staffing the TA classes to see if she had an extra class that I could teach. She told me that all the classes were already staffed. However, she said that she was scheduled to teach Spanish 225, intermediate conversation Spanish, at Chandler Gilbert Community College in Chandler, that she was not going to be able to teach because ASU had asked her to teach a special class for TAs on the same evening. The class was to be once a week on Thursday nights from 7:10 until 9:50. Would I be able to teach it so that she could give my name and number to the person in charge of hiring the Spanish language adjunct faculty? Enthusiastically, I said yes. I received a call from Dr. Anna Jarvis the following day, wanting to know what kind of experience I had. I told her that I was raised in Costa Rica, where I lived for 13 years. I spoke Spanish to my Costa Rican mother and English to my American father, and attended a wonderful Methodist bilingual school where half the classes were taught in Spanish and half in English. For instance, I learned math in Spanish. To this day, anytime I add, subtract, multiply, or divide, I need to think in Spanish. It slows me down if I try to do it in English. And not only that, but the way we do our little arithmetic equations is different than in English. We format them differently. So I still do it the old way. I never taught my children math because I would confuse them too much. I also told her that I had attended Brigham Young University, where I taught Spanish to the missionaries of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who were going on missions to Spanish-speaking countries. I taught at the Language Training Mission, now known as the Mission Training Center, for 3 years. Monday through Friday from 7 to 10 p.m. I was their last instructor for the day. That's how I put myself through school, was teaching there. I also told her that I had taught Spanish 102 at BYU the semester before I graduated, and that I had taught Spanish 101, 102, 201, and 202 at ASU for the previous 2 years. Long story short, she hired me to teach the 225 class. The next day, she called me to see if I could also teach a Spanish 115 beginning conversation on Mondays and Wednesdays at 1 p.m. I was not sure about the 1 p.m. class. I told her that I would let her know the next day. I had a problem. My youngest child was starting kindergarten, and I needed to find after-school daycare for him. Luckily, his school had an after-school program, and I was able to tell Dr. Jarvis that I would be able to teach the afternoon 1 p.m. class. That 1 p.m. class turned out to be a major blessing for me because Carol Terrell, an English professor at Chandler Gilbert, and her retired parents were students in that particular class. They put in a good word for me when a full-time job became available the following year. And I didn't realize at the time that those full-time jobs don't come very often. So the timing was just right. So I learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes God closes certain doors to lead one to a better door. He closed MCC and ASU. There's nothing wrong with him, but I guess that wasn't meant for me, okay? So he closed MCC and ASU to lead me to Chandler Gilbert. My becoming residential faculty at Chandler Gilbert turned out to be one of the greatest blessings of my life. I loved teaching Spanish. It did not feel like work to me because I enjoyed it so much. The only thing that was tedious was all the grading that I had to do after school on exam days. I gave tests after every chapter, which involved essay and fill in the blank. I didn't use Scantron, so it actually took me several hours, to grade the tests. Another special blessing that came from my teaching was travel. In 1994, I began offering cultural awareness trips through the district to many countries. Just like Dr. Guerrero mentioned, the late Dr. Campbell from the governing board and his wife went on my very first district-sponsored trip to Mexico City, the Mexico City area, the Yucatan Peninsula, and Cancun. After doing many trips with the district, I decided to venture out on my own because the process was much less complex, doing it on my own. I didn't have to do as much paperwork or go through a yearly bidding process. I had to go through a yearly bidding process because I did different countries every year. Had I stuck to the same one, I wouldn't have had to do that. I have taken students, faculty members, and staff from 8 of the 10 Maricopa community colleges and many people from the community to all 7 continents. It has brought me great joy to be able to share our beautiful and diverse world with others. I look forward to organizing more trips during my retirement. Again, thank you very much for this Emeritus distinction. I am greatly honored to receive it. Thank you.
Congratulations and thank you for sharing your story and for your many years of service.
Where's your next trip?
We have a question, where are you going next? Where's your next trip?
Well, this summer we're doing Rome and southern Italy and then Sicily. And then the next year we're going to do Opera Margao. And we're going to go to 6 countries, kind of a straight line. And some of the, like Germany or Austria and some of those places.
Sounds wonderful. We're now at the Chancellor's report. Chancellor Harper-Marinick.
Thank you, Dr. Thor. And Cynthia, I also do my math in Spanish. So. Dr. Thor, members of the board, I have 4 presentations tonight. And we start with a special recognition of one of our student athletes and dancer from Paradise Valley Community College. And to make the introduction, I ask Christina Huntley, the athletic director of PVCC, to please come to the podium and introduce our student.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Before I introduce Amy Bacher-Steady and her family, I'd like to show you all a video that has gone viral and hit over 1 billion people worldwide that we're very proud of, and I'm going to use that as an introduction piece.
That's him. That's him. Yeah. What's he doing?
How are you? Are you Amy?
Yes.
Give me a hug. I'm Gary. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
I hear you're a good golfer.
Yes.
You are? You want to
Yeah.
come with the hole with us?
Yes.
Come on, let's go. Hi, I'm Matt. What's your name? Amy. This is John.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I heard you're a heck of a player.
Yes.
Awesome.
You want to hit a shot?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
Oh! Yeah!
You want your golf shoes? We got your clubs right here.
Big focus, all right?
They love me.
I know about that.
Here you go. Ball?
Nice to meet you.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
You need a tee?
All right.
See the flag right in the middle?
Yes.
You got this, kiddo.
Yeah, I got this.
Nice. Give me a 5.
So cool. They love me. Awesome. Awesome.
You like all these people?
Yes.
You want to hit it out?
Yeah.
You do?
Yes, I do.
Let's do it.
I got this.
I love it.
You can do this. You can do this.
Nice. That is awesome. That is awesome. Let's go. Let's go putt. We're going to make this.
Yeah.
That is so good.
Thank you.
That was fantastic.
Thank you. It's amazing.
What do you think? Going a little left?
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and make that?
Okay. I got this.
You got it?
Yeah.
Let's do it. That is so awesome.
Yes.
You are so awesome.
Thank you.
That is so good.
Yeah.
Wow, so cool.
Incredible.
Thank
Give him
you.
a big wave. Give him a big wave.
Oh. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. You are so good.
Thank you.
Amy, it was awesome to meet you.
That's
You're an
nice to
inspiration
you.
to us, all right?
Okay.
You're our hero.
Oh, you are amazing.
Thank you.
I'm so proud of you. You happy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the story, Amy was invited by Special Olympics to participate in an event during Waste Management Phoenix Open Week and received a special invitation to play the 16th hole. And as we say, the rest is history. So thank you for allowing us the opportunity to come here and show off a little bit for PVCC athletics. But as a community college athletics department, every day we strive to create an environment of inclusion and opportunity with the goal of making a positive impact in the lives of our student athletes that will far outreach their time with us on campus. There's no denying that Amy's story is unique. That said, every one of our student athletes has a unique story, a unique journey, and that in that regard, Amy is no different. Amy came to us from Sandra Day O'Connor High School, where she played with her high school team and where she advanced to the state tournament 2 years of her 4 years there, her junior and senior years. As our head coach, Matt Keel, would tell you, PVCC Athletics offered Amy a scholarship to play for our golf team based on her merits as a golfer. That's what we do every day. As the NJCAA says, opportunities start here. Amy's involvement in our program has simply reinforced why my team and I go to work every day and why athletics is so important in our communities. We want to make a difference and positively impact our student athletes. Through sport, we provide an opportunity for education, both in the classroom and in life. Amy's a testament to some of the things we hope to teach in athletics: ambition, goal setting, tenacity, courage. These among many other life skills that serve all of us well in our day-to-day lives. Amy's a college student, a golfer, a dancer, an advocate, and a friend. She's a young woman with a story that transcends differences and reminds all of us that there's value in opportunity and experience, of which PVCC Athletics is fortunate to be a part. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Amy Bockersteady and her parents, Jenny and Joe.
Thank you at Kpi Community College.
Yeah.
Good job. So I'm Amy's dad, Joe Bockersteady, and we can say that we are all very grateful for the opportunity Amy's been given to play golf at Paradise Valley Community College. You may not know this is a first. Amy is the first person with Down syndrome to ever receive a college scholarship to play athletics. And so we're so without the Maricopa Community College system, Amy would not have been given the opportunity to pursue her goals of playing college golf and to be a college student. So for that, we are very, very grateful. Thank you.
Congratulations, Amy. We're very proud of you. Dr. Harper-Marinick?
No, thank you, Dr. Thor. The next presentation is an update on the work of the transformation, and we have with us Dr. Rob Johnstone, who is the founder and president of the National Center for Inquiry and Improvement. And I think, as all of you know, They are serving as the consultants for the initiative. The NCII helps 2- and 4-year colleges create structures and processes that increase student completion, learning, and labor market outcomes. And I invite Dr. Johnstone to come to the podium and guide us through that presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Harper. Thank you, Dr. Thor and the board and my friends of CEC and friends in the room. By the way, that is a really hard act to follow. It's too bad she left so quickly because as a single-digit handicap golfer, I've been in that bunker. That was not an easy shot she got up and down from, so just so you know that ahead of time. It's a wonderful opportunity to be here and share the very impressive progress of the people in the Maricopa colleges who are working on guided pathways through transformation. What I'm going to do is, and by the way, I tend to, all these people who've known me from these workshops know that you can interrupt and ask questions at any time. I'd like to have this be a conversation with you. And if you want to wait till the end, that's fine too. But I tend to be much happier when people are asking questions about the work. And just kind of just for a couple minutes, talk about the big ideas of guided pathways. I know conversations have been in here before on that. But I want to talk a little bit about the movement as a whole, and then talk about the impressive work that the Maricopa colleges and your wonderful folks in the room have been doing over the last year plus. And the big ideas of guided pathways, just really quickly. First is that we need to clarify the paths to student end goals. The idea that students need to have a clear vision of where they're going and they have transparency as to trying to reach their goals. And for most of your students, that's going to be transfer to a 4-year institution with junior standing in a major, or directly entering the workforce through a certificate or degree program with a job with a sustainable wage. And to reach those, we have some of the big ideas, including meta majors and program maps. We'll talk about those in a little minute. Bringing career and transfer information earlier into the process so students can make an informed decision about program and where they're headed. And also the idea that of redesigning math pathways so that students have a clearer path to completing college-level math to be able to achieve those goals. A second big idea of we call the 4 pillars of pathways. We got to help students get on the path. We can have the clearest paths in the world, but if students aren't able to make an informed decision about how to get on those paths, their journey is not going to be optimized with us. And you can see the first bullet on that is the notion of early career and transfer exploration. You sit in Arizona. I have the good fortune of working all over the country. And Arizona, in general, as a state, the policy on transfer may be like 47 or 48 other states. It's not as strong as we'd like it to be, but your relationship with ASU is incredibly strong. It's generally seen as a national model in a relationship between a 2-year college and a 4-year college. And I know that the work being done with U of A and NAU is also strong. But the example I always give on this is you would think that if you took Psych 1 at any community college in Arizona, that it would be accepted the same way at every 4-year school in the state, and that it tends not to be the case at most 4-year schools in the country. So you do have that good relationship with ASU, but we know that a student, and especially in more esoteric programs, is going to have to make a decision about where they're going, and some of those decisions have effects on what courses they should be taking now while they're here with the Maricopa colleges. So the idea of trying to focus earlier on transfer, and then also, of course, those students trying to directly enter careers. Having an academic and financial plan on how they're going to get through the institution, how long that's going to take, what's the cost. We heard the great work that Estrella Mountain's been doing to try to work on student financial stability. I know the other colleges in the district are working on that as well. And the notion of integrated and contextualized academic support, helping students get the support they need to reach their goals, and building that into the structures and systems. The third big idea about keeping students on the path. I'm a data guy. My doctorate's in social psychology. I worked in industry as a strategic consultant before working in Dr. Thor's district shortly before she got there, Foothill de Anza and Skyline in California. And one of the things that I brought with me from industry is this mentality about how do we use data to monitor progress. And it's something that you have some excellent leaders in institution. There we go. They're so excellent, they actually stopped me from talking. You have some excellent leaders in this district in institutional research, and I'll talk a little bit more directly about them in a little bit. The notion of intrusive support, making sure that students don't have to find support, it finds them. From a social justice and an equity standpoint, we have a history of offering supports, and those who tend to take those supports are not the ones who most need them. And so the idea of building in supports, whether we call them intrusive or what a colleague likes to say, inescapable supports, that students are going to be able to get the support they need to go down their path on their journey. And then frequent feedback to students. I was talking with a colleague earlier today about how in industry there's this saying that it costs 10 times as much to find a new customer as it does to serve a current one, right? You guys know that saying? Well, we in higher education historically have done the opposite of that. We spend a lot of money up front, but don't invest any money in our current students down the road. And you guys have done it here in this district with the transformation investment and advising and some other things you've done here to invest in that support that keeps students on the path. And the days, by the way, of an inexhaustible supply of potential community college students are gone. That was a great time when we just would open our doors and people would fill the seats no matter what we did. That started shifting in the early 2000s, and because of population demographics, because of competition from for-profit institutions, in your region, competition from ASU, going out to the regionals, and we're moving down into the first 2 years, you have a lot of competition. And so the idea of, by the way, keep monitoring and giving students support and keeping them on the path is not only a moral and ethical mission for the college, it's also your financial wellness is based on being able to keep students here and not only get them to their goals, but to generate the kind of financial and profit you make from them over time. I'm in this for the moral and ethical reasons first, but you guys also have to run an institution and make sure that your fiduciary responsibilities are kept. And the good news about Guided Pathways is it's working on both the moral and ethical reasons and the financial reasons at the same time. And finally, none of this works unless we ensure that students are learning. Right, this is a pillar that is, I would say, probably of the 4 pillars nationally in this movement, which is in its 7th or 8th year, the one that's still developing the most. But the idea is to really focus on field-relevant experiential learning, active learning, and the idea of making sure that when our students graduate from our programs, we know exactly what they're going to be able to do and how they're going to be able to act when they move either to the transfer institution or directly into the workforce. Just real quickly, all right, there we go. Oh, question, is that what that meant? Sorry, thank you, Tom. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know what the bell meant. I was not given the, yeah.
No, I agree with all you're saying. On number 2, you're talking about getting students on the path early.
Yeah.
You talked about coordinating with ASU and U of A and all this sort of thing. But one thing I don't hear is what kind of coordination we're doing with the high schools.
Yes.
How do we get them on the path even sooner?
Yeah, and Tom, this is something that around the country, this is one of the areas of development under Guided Pathways, and we focus a lot on the transfer because we have the students here and that's their admission destination, but working back with the high schools, the nice thing about the Guided Pathways movement is it potentially changes your relationship with the high schools. Right? When we make this transformation from a focus on offering courses to a focus on how students enter and move through programs, it provides whoever's in charge of marketing a huge opportunity to work with the high schools to talk about how do we now transition students into the 2-year college with a program mentality. Right? And so that is something that absolutely, by the way, it's already been folks talking about that here within the institution, but it's an incredibly important piece of this. And we've seen examples in other states of this notion of the meta-major idea from Pillar 1 of that when students come into a community college, we might, rather than ask them to choose from your 240 programs, to choose from 1 or 7 or 8 big content areas. You can go back to the high school with that and say, hey, it's not just 240 programs anymore, but we want students to make this initial decision. Help us with that transition. Makes it a lot easier.
So I'm hearing about working with them, but what sort of input are we getting from the high schools? Because it seems that we're often talking past each other with, we're telling the high schools this is what you need and here's how we're going to help your students.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, hey, colleges, here's how you can help our students. Instead of getting that input, getting it up front instead of after the fact.
Right, and in more formative ways. I mean, the reform around math and English, what is put under the umbrella of developmental education reform, is one effort to help change the relationship of how we talk to high schools. I've worked with nearly 400 colleges around the country, and I can't tell you how common it is to hear some version of this story. I mean, one of our presidents here talks to the superintendent of the high school district and say, hey, we need more qualified students from your high school district. And the superintendent from the high school says, well, how do you know they're unqualified? And he says, well, we give them a placement test that says they're unqualified. And so what the president's thinking is, yeah, their students are not prepared. And what the high school superintendent is saying, what's wrong with your test? Right? I mean, by the way, and the national data suggests there are some things wrong with the test we've used historically, and we've we've been very conservative in what we think students can do. So I do think there's, in terms of program development, there's another opportunity for the transitions to come out of high school. It requires relationship capital, right, to do these things. And I think the hearts and minds of superintendents is one, but at the end of the day, where this will be won or lost in that transition is with the high school counselors.
As a high school counselor.
As a high school counselor, hey, I didn't even know that. My research, I have a card here that said that.
That's exactly the point.
Yeah.
We're not getting our input in, and so I think that's the important part.
Absolutely.
Nobody's asking us, and we need that voice.
Yeah, and as this movement unfolds here at Maricopa, and I'm going to tell you at the end, this is a long-term journey, right? There are so many tendrils to this and different avenues of this work, and this is a big one. And the question of when in this process do you evolve that relationship with the high school is an interesting one. Do you want it to be a little more developed? Or do you want to have them be involved in the process? But I mean, not knowing that you were a high school counselor, I said it anyway, that is, I mean, at the end of the day, what the high school counselors are telling prospective students may be your single biggest recruiting catalyst or recruiting challenge. Because I could tell you some stories of my California days of high school counselors actually benefited us at Foothill De Anza, high school counselors in East San Jose, where I grew up, telling students, don't go to any of the 4 schools that are near you, take the bus to De Anza, because you're going to have a better ability to train. And that type of thing, by the way, went on when I was in high school in the 80s. It still goes on, right? So that type of relationship is incredibly important to manage. Couldn't agree more. Now I know what the dinging means. That's good news. I'm just going to move quickly through this. This is some our friends at CCRC, the Community College Research Center at Columbia. One of the big ideas of this redesign work is that we're actually starting with the end in mind. So rather than thinking of things in terms of the connection of students to entry, to progress and completion, to advancement, we actually need to start at the tail end of this. Is focus on what the key outcomes for students are and work backwards. And you can see the big ideas from the previous slide are aligned there. But if you start with what 90% at least of your students are trying to do here, one of the very little known statistics nationally, if you look at first time in college students, anywhere in the system of higher education, the percentage of them that say they want a bachelor's degree who start in community colleges is 83%. It is a very high number. Now, they may not know what that means, by the way. They may not know that they would be, in some cases, better off with a certain AA degree or a certificate, but the aspirations of students are very high. So if we start with those aspirations, and by the way, those who directly enter the workforce still have those aspirations. They may need to enter the workforce first, but they have those aspirations long term, and having true career pathways and career ladders are important for those students. But you have the same big ideas here on this slide. And then just to kind of put the equity considerations here on a slide as well, as at each of the 4 stages, asking questions like, back to your observation, Tom, are we reaching out to help underrepresented students in high schools, adult ed, non-credit programs, explore the college's pathways? When they get here, are we having underrepresented students entering programs that lead to higher wages, to make sure we're not accidentally reifying intergenerational poverty, right? And one of the things I ask colleges to do on this is take a look at your recent graduates in nursing or in engineering, and take a look at your recent graduates in some of your lower wage programs, and tell me if you're okay with the ethnic breakdown of those programs. Because they're very often quite different. Now, that's not 100% something we have control over, but the idea is we have to work on this. We have to open doors for people. We have to let them see possibilities. Do patterns of program switching result in representation in high remuneration degrees and careers? And then our post-graduation employment outcomes equitable. We're just starting to get this data now in higher education. It's very eye-opening data. And then transfer and bachelor's completion outcomes. We tend to act in the community college system sometimes as if our job ends when they transfer. But if they transfer and then don't complete, you could actually make an argument that student's in a worse situation than if they hadn't transferred at all. Right, because of the debt they accumulate at the next level. The debt you accumulate in a community college tends not to be very high. The debt you accumulate at the next level can be much higher, and if our students aren't succeeding, we have to worry about those things as well. And by the way, on average, community college students do very well after they transfer. In many cases, their rates are actually higher than native freshmen from the 4-year school. So it's not as if overall the system has a problem, but we need to look program-based at what's happening. And so now I'm going to kind of step into, we started working with our friends here at Maricopa in late and fall of 2017, early of 2018, and I'm going to kind of walk through some highlights of the accomplishments of the great people in this room, the presidents and the folks in the audience. the first step was kind of creating this foundation for change. And this sounds like a trivial thing, but I can tell you, and Dr. Thor, you will know this as well, going back to our days at Foothill De Anza, that what you guys are trying to do here is possibly the most audacious effort that exists in the country right now. And I don't say that with any hyperbole intended, but to have 10 colleges who've been working on 10 different journeys for the past 5 decades, with a loose affiliation as a district, now trying to do this really heady and important and deep work together is actually amazingly impressive. I was a vice president at Foothill in California. If you tried to tell me that Foothill and De Anza were going to go down the same path and have the same program maps and the same meta majors, this room would be full with people saying there's no way in hell we're working with Foothill or De Anza on this. So the fact that you're doing this together is incredibly important. It's not easy, right, to try to do this together, and you've had some people in the room who are responsible for some very strong work in trying to help this, and it's an ongoing process. But the fact that you're doing this together is really important. The notion of district-wide guided pathways design principle, it was here that my colleagues, Kay McClenny and Gretchen Schmidt nationally, who's the other part of my team, realized this notion of design principle was so critical. We actually use it everywhere now, whether it's at a district or within a college. So the design principles that Dr. Harper-Marinick and the team came up with before our first workshop, we use as a model, as a process around the country. The ideas that we're going to have one set of program maps, one set of meta majors. They're going to have developmental education, being able to make sure that students can complete math and English in a year, that we're going to have one approach to advising with different flavors at the 10 colleges. All of these things are incredibly important. And then we're engaging, your colleges are now engaging in new ways now. So one of the things that as my history in higher education as a strategic consultant in industry, I tend to observe is that we often have structures that aren't set up to solve today's problems. Right? The problems that exist in guided pathways are not the same problems that existed when we set the structures up we currently have. So, for example, the notion of functional work groups to do program mapping across 10 colleges led by Jen Fay and her colleagues, that's a different business problem than we had before, when each college had to worry about what are the courses we're going to offer at our college and how do those translate into programs. That's not the same thing, right? So this is not an easy transition, and I think there has been development over the last year on this, but there's been a clear focus on how do we work together. We've done 4 workshops now, and we've seen the progression of this at each of the 4 workshops, different topics, by the way, on how the colleges are working together. And to be clear, there have been some challenges in the climate. A, you're working together in new ways, and B, wherever you are on the kind of challenges that were concerning the faculty around board policy. That, by the way, was announced the day before we started our first workshop. Right? Thank you for that. That was great timing. But this has been, what I've been impressed by is through all of the kind of discourse and debate about some of these things going on in the district, people have stayed focused, and they've stayed focused for a reason we'll talk about later, because they fundamentally are coming at this from a core of social justice and equity and economic mobility to improve outcomes for students, and that has kept this moving. That is not the case everywhere. That is something that's very notable here in the Maricopa colleges. The mapping approach, I already named Jen Fay, this authentic learning-driven program mapping process for 200 plus programs of study. And this is something that it's absolutely a national model. I've worked with colleges in dozens of states on individually and how they go about mapping their programs. And this version here is the one that is most grounded in the learning and the learning outcomes, while still, of course, taking into account things like transfer as well. But it is absolutely a model to be used around the country. I am sure there will be, in fact, I got invited yesterday independently from the foundation who originally funded that work to submit that process to a peer-reviewed journal as a national example. And so I hope you guys do that. I'll sign off on it. But this has really been something that's been an impressive part of the work. Developmental education, right? The ideas of, we've learned so much. Like, I was someone who in California was part of an author of a report that came out in 2005 that led to the Basic Skills Initiative in California, where we realize now 10 years later that 90% of what we suggested in that report we now know better. Right? We now know that we actually can, through acceleration and co-requisite models, get a vastly higher number of students through their transfer level math and English in 1 year. It takes a different way of thinking. Some of that way of thinking is counterintuitive. Right? And the field nationally has moved in the last 10 years in this front. And the urgency around this in Maricopa happened from last summer to now was very quick. And it's been very impressive what your team on the developmental education side has put forth in both math and English, and there will be different flavors at each of the colleges, but under that mindset of making sure that all students have a chance to get through transfer level math and English in 1 year. It's been a very aggressive timeline and a highly student-centered effort. The advising model, right? You guys as the board know, you invested in this greatly, and it's a nice problem to have the funds to hire 30 or so new advisors. But the question is, what are those advisors focused on in a guided pathways framework? How does advising evolve? And your folks in charge of that have really taken this on with practitioners on the ground and leadership at the district level to work on this notion of how do you create position descriptions, hire these new advisors, onboard them, and create this kind of safety net of support for students. It's still ongoing, as is all of this, but it's another sense of accomplishment that I would have around that work. The new student onboarding process, we talked about how coming into the institution is very different now. Historically, if you were a counselor or an advisor in the district, or anywhere in the country, by the way, your job with a student, you have like half an hour with a new student, you're supposed to talk about their hopes and dreams, their life goals, their educational history, and then also magically figure out that quickly what they're going to do at the college over the next 3 years. It's a nearly impossible task. Like, we can't have it all be in that 30-minute session. But what we tried to do historically is get them a first semester of classes. And then we would try to deal with it later. Well, that only works if you have something on the back end to make sure you're going to be able to deal with them later. And so we're now kind of, your folks have mapped both the current and the desired future state for an onboarding process, and a lot of energy around what does a true first semester experience look like. And if you've had a child or a grandchild or someone in your family go to an Ivy League institution or an elite private liberal arts institution, ask yourself the question of what their onboarding process looked like. People from the top 1% academically, right, who get into the Yales and the Middleburys of the world, they have week-long onboarding because the Yales and Middleburys of the world know that their students aren't prepared for college, right? It takes a transition into a culture to be ready for higher education, and those are with our academically successful students with lots of social capital. With our students who represent the full range of academic preparedness and in the lower ranges of social capital, we do markedly less to onboard students to the institution. And maybe shouldn't be surprised why that onboarding isn't optimal. And so your folks are really working on this. It's also, by the way, Yale and Middlebury have a lot of money through $60,000 a year tuition to engage in some of those programs. You don't, right? So the question is, how do we take some of the features that we've learned from places like Yale and Middlebury and implement them in a two-year college environment? Career exploration, we've talked about this a couple of times. This is on the national pathways scene. It's probably my biggest kind of pet issue, is that we tend to act as if students are just going to find out information on careers on their own and make rational decisions. Like I love, as a social psychologist, by the way, like humans don't make rational decisions. Our students are just humans, right? We have to put them in structures and conditions so they can make more optimal decisions. And this career exploration earlier in the process is one really strong way of doing this. You'd rather have someone figure out in semester 1, by the way, that they don't like blood and they're not going to be a great physical therapist or nurse, than have them find that out in semester 5, when they're 5 semesters in. Same to do with the other areas, right? So it's actually almost as important to find out what you don't want to do early than what you actually do want to do. Because if you get on the path of something that you realize later you don't want to do, that's just where the cost and the debt starts rising and the people don't complete. A couple more to finish here. How do you operationalize the work? Having done this work now, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, where Maricopa operates as 10 of the 21 colleges I work most deeply with on this, getting this work operationalized is the biggest challenge. Like we mentioned earlier, your systems and structures weren't set up to solve today's problems. So your folks have done a great job at thinking about how the structures you have are serving, and also the notion of implementation teams at each college, which these presidents are leading, to support the district-wide guided pathways redesign work, and to make it a flavor that's a little different in each of the colleges while keeping with the overall principles. It's been really impressive work. You've got some project management capacity kind of developing at the district as well. That's important to support the work. And your IR folks. I'm a former IR professional, and we tell you what your IR folks have done with this Kpi Dashboard. We share this nationally as an example here, a one-page dashboard of the key momentum metrics. By the way, you all want to move completion and graduation rates, but those take a long time to measure. So on the national scene, we really tried hard to find a bunch of one-term and one-year metrics that were highly predictive of those downstream success. And that set of that we call the momentum metrics, your folks here got that data together in a very short period of time folks like Lori Lindenberg and others, and got that into a dashboard in front of people before the first institute. And I use that link all the time to show people how to visualize in a simple way these KPIs that kind of are the underpinning of this work. And finally, as I said earlier, the equity mindset with which your people have approached this work. The idea that the notion of student progress and success is not just a theoretical construct. These are not numbers on a page, or I could show you charts and graphs. That's all great, but these are students. When you think about the number of new students that enter the Maricopa colleges every year, I'd have to guess that's 35 or 40,000 students. Think about how many more of them would reach their goals if you had a 10% improvement in your outcomes. That's 4,000 students a year. That's 40,000 students in a decade who would reach their goals that maybe don't currently reach them as you continue down this path. And by the way, those ones who reach those goals more over time are going to be more likely to be underrepresented students, students of color, and first-time in college students. And that mindset has driven this work. Our reflections from having worked on this, I've worked with nearly 400 colleges around the country. All the stuff I've described in the previous slide is a challenge for any individual college to move forward. And you've moved them forward collectively in parallel. One of the things I suggest to colleges, don't take this all on at once. Stage this in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. You guys ignored that and move forward with this very audacious effort to do these things in parallel. You have leveraged the massive human capital resources and expertise and energy of the thousands of people who work in this district on this work. It's highly impressive. This is a long journey. This is not how, historically, we tend to work on small problems in big ways or big problems in small ways. This is working on big problems in big ways. It's going to take sustained effort over time. We like to talk about version 1.0 of Guided Pathways rolling out in fall of 2020. You're going to not really optimize this till you hit versions 2, 3, 4, and 5 and learn from what happens in the first version. And that's where this is going to get really kind of impressive. I'll stop there. I've got some background stuff on the kind of our support of your work, but most importantly is the work that these folks around at the table here and in the room have done. And it's part of a long journey. We have been honored to be a part of that journey and to continue to be a part of it. And I'll take any more questions now before I wrap up.
Well, thank you, Dr. Johnstone, for a very exciting and affirming report. And I want you to know that I do not take personally the fact that you left Foothill De Anza as I arrived as Chancellor.
That was completely coincidental, I assure you. I'm glad to be back with you here.
Thank you. Mrs. Sullivan.
Okay, let me turn this on. I'm on. Okay. So thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you, Chancellor, for bringing this to our attention. I'm impressed with all the words on paper, and certainly the conceptual design. Your presentation is very macro.
Absolutely.
So my question to the Chancellor is, where do I go to learn more of the micro of some of these elements?
Mrs. Sullivan, members of the board, there is a transformation website that has a lot of detail of all the work happening. So we'll send the link to all of you. And then there are great people, many of them in the audience, who are actually engaged in this work. So if at any time you would like to see additional information, we can provide that. But for now, we'll send you the link to the website.
I had gone on the website, but I was still kind of struggling with some of this. But so you talk a lot about macro design. May I ask a follow-up?
Yes.
What is your relationship in this model to human-centered design? You rolled your eyes.
No, I was just kind of thinking of how to respond to it. I mean, can you, for me, take it one step further on how you see that as related to this work? Because people say human-centered design, and it means a range of things. So, like, what do you, when you think of human-centered design, like, what is the
where you take an idea, you operationalize it, and you test it out, but it's based on what is going to improve the human outcome.
Yeah, so I think the notion of the kind of those KPIs, the key performance indicators, that dashboard we talk about, like, none of this matters unless you move those, right? So you have to watch them and look at the relationship between individual efforts we have, the student outcomes. We have done this nationally, and we have seen double-digit increases on many of those key outcomes. And so although you're not here at Maricopa there yet, because you're early in this, or in the middle of this design process, what you also are getting at is something that that we like to build into this, which is that we love these kind of implementation teams to be identifying what are the key metrics to know if what they are doing is working in terms of student outcomes. And that's something we've kind of started, but they've been working on the design side of this, and that's another aspect of the design that we could probably elevate. We really are very devoted to that set of momentum metrics because research has shown they are highly predictive of what happens downstream. There's a human side to this in terms of the qualitative experiences of students. One of the things we're doing before our next workshop in April is running a couple of student focus groups at each college. The president's just got an email about this last week where we're going to try to get at the teaching and learning issues that are existing on the student side of the house, and so that can be fed into the workshop that we're doing in April on teaching and learning. So I think there's an intersection between what the data reports about the outcomes of students and also the kind of student experience side with this as well.
And my last question along that line, I'm acquainted to some degree with some workforce development models. And a lot of what is being articulated as appropriate models to really put people into sustainable employment is based on human-centered design. So it seems that there would be a disconnect if education was going on one path in guided pathways and workforce development might be going in another, unless there was at some point an intersection of dialogue and experience to really generate the workforce development outcomes that all of us want.
Absolutely, and I think the fourth pillar, the idea of ensuring that students are learning, it's embedded in that pillar that the answer to whether students are learning, there's an internal question to that we answer through courses. But at the end of the day, this is played out at the next step in the process. And either that's direct entry to the workforce with those employers, getting the feedback from them. And we do a pretty good job on this. I think it's going to evolve a little under guided pathways. And then on the transfer side, I mean, it's not as if transfer students don't want to end up in the workforce, right? 99% of them are going to enter the workforce in 2 to 3 more years. So that employment data is such an important piece of this. This again goes back to that kind of, there's the macro employment data about living wages and employability and whether we've moved the needle on that intergenerational poverty, economic mobility, but there's also the program by program relationship between our programs and the students graduating from our programs and what they're able to demonstrate in industry. Interestingly, you may be aware that much of that research suggests that it's actually not the discipline-based expertise that students have the biggest problem with applying in the workforce. It's things like critical thinking and communication and computation. Right. So this supports your human-centered design. And some of your folks here in the district are very aware of this relationship. And I think the strengthening of the learning side of the mapping pathways is designed, at least in part, to address this issue.
Okay, thank you. I look forward to learning more. Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Narini.
So back to my high school counselor hat. Also, I spent 20 plus years in higher education doing retention and recruitment and outreach and things. So I heard a lot of agreement about how we need to incorporate high schools and things.
Yep.
But I didn't hear the plan. When and how are we going to start including the high schools and things?
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea for that is kind of under that pillar of the onboarding process where you're designing that you're kind of at the stage, and that, by the way, workshop was in the fall, the last workshop in the fall. So evolving from that, the idea of that onboarding process needs to include this, how does the relationship with the high schools change? There are others who are working on that who I'm sure have evolved it since we saw them back in the fall. But that is where it fits under the features here, is in that kind of onboarding into a first semester experience process of working more directly with the high schools to make sure that we're kind of optimizing and maybe structuring that in different ways than we have historically. And I think the pathways mentality allows us to do that, but there's a lot of work to be done there to figure out exactly what are the 3 messages we want all high school counselors to have about the new Maricopa. The back of my head, I think about some advertising I heard when I was driving through North Carolina to one of the colleges we work with in North Carolina, who's much farther down the guided pathways front. And their advertising was, it's not the same Guilford Technical Community College you knew. We're doing things a new way. We're going to help you make choices about programs. We're going to work, like it was in I don't know that radio advertising catches the student. I thought that as I was listening to this. I'm not sure who's listening to radio advertising besides a certain age demographic. But the idea of it's a new Maricopa. We're going to do things new ways. How do we communicate to that high school? How do you build them in to be part of the process? I think is absolutely something to maybe elevate as part of that team that's working on it.
So I guess my point is, where do we get asked? Where do the schools get asked? When do we get asked? Because we can often tell the high schools all day long what they need and how we need to have the students prepared. But when in this whole process do we get asked to input?
To be part of the design.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the answer to that is in the emerging work that kind of the student, I mean, Felicia and others on the kind of student support side are working on to change that kind of recruiting and onboarding experience. That would be where that would live. I mean, I think it's certainly a fair question to ask. What is the development on those areas in the coming time?
So, yeah, it'd be interesting hearing that. So
yeah,
thanks.
Mr. Sark.
And along those lines, we put some funding in place to increase the number of resources we had in advisement.
Yeah.
And you talked about it earlier. We talked, I think, at the time that if they were doing things in the national average, we'd have somewhere around 500 advisors, with quotes.
The NACADA rate, yeah.
And we're at about a fourth of that now. Is that going to be an impediment to success in this program? I'm looking at it from the board standpoint. I don't want to be that impediment. So, are we going to be looking at more funding down the line?
Yep. So it's a very common question asked about pathways. Is given that colleges have not necessarily invested to what is considered the optimal level historically, how much more are we going to need to invest? I mean, you guys made a clear first step on this that I think is an important one, and I think it also catalyzed a rethinking of what advising is going to look like under a new model. That was a really important piece of the process. And look, there's a return on investment on what the investment you put into this. And look, financially, we actually can. I've developed some models to share numbers on that. I mean, if you were to put X more into it, what would have to change in the average number of units each students take to pay for that investment? Hopefully, we'll be able to show you in a year or two that the investment you've made so far and the investments you've made so far have that initial change. And at that point, you can make a decision about whether it's worth an additional investment to support various features of the process. The other thing about advising is to think about how we use technology, how we use group advising as part of this process. This idea of meta majors makes some parts of advising easier because you have students entering of a like mind together, so you can do some things to save some resources to dedicate later. But yes, I think the number one thing nationally about pathways, everyone always says is, I don't think they say it's going to fail because we don't have enough advisors, but that is a huge challenge over time. And that's, by the way, another one of those things that the Yales and Middleburys of the world have are ratios that are much more not only attuned to the national average, but much more dedicated, and kind of that notion of managing the student life cycle is a little easier when you've got a 20 to 1 or 30 to 1 ratio than like 1,600 to 1. So trying to find them, the other thing is not every student needs advising all of the time. And historically, if you look at our data, the ones who see our advisors the most are the ones who need it the least. It's not the advisor's fault, it's the systemic approach. So there's the targeting has to get better as well. I cannot stand here and tell you that you wouldn't be better off with more advisors, because you would be better off with more advisors. But I also am not responsible for the fiduciary aspects of the district. You are, right? So I think that at some point this conversation, if thinking about it in terms of a return on investment mentality, I think is incredibly important. But there's also the reality of managing year to year your budget as to when and how you make those investments.
Thank you for being here, Pat. That's good.
Dr. Johnstone, thank you very much for being here tonight and for your continuing work with our district.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chancellor?
Dr. Thor, some of the people responsible for a lot of the work that we just heard are in the audience. So if any of you who are working in transformation could stand so we can say thank you for the work. And I know you're here because I can see many of you. So. Thank you. The next presentation, I believe Felicia Ganther is coming to the podium, and it is to let us know how the Exploring Possibilities event went. And it was one way to engage high school students in making decisions about college.
President Thor, members of the board, Chancellor Harper-Marinick, members of the CEC, good evening. Good evening. I have just a few minutes to share with you about Exploring Possibilities, but I will say to my good friend who just presented, our work is all around exposing students to the opportunities that they could potentially have within our district. And so it's very important for us to make sure that students get to see, touch, and feel. When you're trying to say a particular career opportunity is available to them and you say electrician or you say you want to be in the medical field, there's more to the medical field than just nursing. And so this is an opportunity for us to expose students to that. We had 2 days, 2 great days. The first day was February 1st. We were down at the Phoenix Convention Center, and that day was primarily dedicated to middle and high school students. And then day 2, we were there again, and it was open to the public and community. Again, this was a hands-on interactive experience. We had equipment, demonstrations, videos, educational resources, and we also had our college services there as well. One of the things that we wanted to make sure that happened is that we wanted to give the students a real convention-style experience. That we didn't want it to be like a fair, but we wanted it to be like an expo. And so with the help of our wonderful Pam Ashley, will you stand? She was our conference coordinator, and so she put everything together with the Phoenix Convention Center, so thank you. We also wanted to make sure that the students understood how we were going to expose them to all of the career and educational opportunities. And we wanted to also make sure that we had plenty of hands-on experiences. I want to send a shout out to my friend David Weaver over here. We did about 2 commercials together that had over 50,000 views on Facebook, exposing and letting people know about all of the different things that they can see. And again, this was an interactive program and service. And the most important thing was for us is we wanted to touch as many students as we possibly could. We had about 4,300 middle and high school students and about 600 adult participants on Friday, February 1. And then on Saturday, we had an average of 300 to 600 people come in per hour to come in and view 200 plus exhibitors. We also included our performing arts on Friday. We had performances from our various college performing arts. We had workshops and demonstrations, so students could opt to go into a workshop about financial aid, how to get into the college, how to transfer. And then we had vendors. And the requirement for the vendors was that you have to provide either a service that's going to support a student along their educational journey, or you're going to be able to provide them a job. So we were very happy to have all of our exhibitors there. One of the important things, and in your packet you have that, is that we wanted to support all of the great work that's been happening with the Transformation Project. In that, we have now fields of interest. And so we designed the experience around the fields of interest. And if you open up the wonderful brochure, it will then outline what the convention center looked like and all of the corresponding programs. Those are every program that was there on site for students to experience. At this time, I want to introduce my good friend. Come on up here. This young lady is the engine behind all of this. I had a vision and a dream, and she took the reins and got everything moving. So I wanted to acknowledge Donna Martinez. She was a coordinator for this effort, and I'm going to have her talk a little bit about who was involved in the program.
Thank you, Dr. Ganther. Good evening. It's important to highlight the fact that this was a truly a Maricopa effort. This could not be done by one department, one person, certainly. And so you need to realize that there was dedicated staff that accepted what we had did last year at Phoenix College and realized how we wanted to grow the vision. Truly a collective impact representing Maricopa Community Colleges to allow our community members, our middle school, high school students to be exposed to career possibilities and to obtain information on how to be successful during their time with us. With that, we had an endless list of Maricopa staff, faculty who were committed to meet on a monthly, bi-weekly basis as needed. Not only that, but they took that upon themselves to create subcommittees at their respective colleges in order to gauge the support at the college level. As we took the show on the road to meet with the endless number of nonprofit groups, organizations, community agencies, they too saw the vision of exploring possibilities. This was an easy sell. This was a commitment representing Maricopa County. We did every effort to contact every superintendent, every principal, every counselor, CTE director, to promote this event. From day one, the invitations and the RSVP list started coming in, and the endless responses were the positive feedback that we received, phone calls, emails. We even had an email created, exploring possibilities, that were almost hundreds on a daily basis that we responded to. And the consistent message was, thank you for finally doing this. And so it's been my honor, my privilege to see Dr. Ganther's vision and to be able to execute it out with the wonderful faculty and staff throughout the college and working with the community. Thank you for your support.
Finally, I just want to say shout out to my good friends in the marketing department. We wanted to brand this product, and we wanted people to know that this is an event that's going to happen annually. And we want folks to recognize the brand along with the event. So I want to thank our marketing department for helping us to come up with the vision for exploring possibilities. And finally, I want to say that there are some folks that are here in the room that helped out with exploring possibilities, but I would be remiss if I didn't say that I'd like to thank the Chancellor for helping us to develop this program 2 years ago. And then I want to thank my boss, the provost, for helping me to just live in the moment. So this has been an exciting project, and we're excited about the opportunity. And finally, I would like to thank the presidents. Please thank your vice presidents as they helped us to bring together all of those programs that you see in that lovely shiny brochure. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. That's an awesome initiative, so congratulations to you and everyone who was involved. Are there any comments or questions from board members?
I want to thank
Mr.
Sarr. He came out and hung out with me on Saturday, and we walked around, so thank you.
Hanging out with Felicia is an experience you all should. But this was awesome. The people that I talked to that were there were just blown away by all the people that they were able to talk to and learn about careers, whether they were in the high school range or they were adults. I look forward to doing this even better next year.
And can I say, if you all are on Facebook, if you go to Chicana por la Causa Facebook site, we have about a 45-minute video that has almost 60,000 views, and we just go one by one through each of the various booths to explain what those programs are. And so you would have a first-hand view of what was experienced on Friday and Saturday. Thank you.
Wonderful. Chancellor.
I promise last. At the request of the governing board members during agenda review last week, we have asked President Steven Gonzalez to do a presentation on the Makerspace.
Dr. Thor, may I approach the podium, please?
Please.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity, President Thor, members of the governing board, Chancellor Harper-Marinick, CEC, and guests. In his book, Robot Proof, Higher Education in the Age of Artificial Intelligence, Joseph Aoun, president of Northeastern University in Boston, Massachusetts, issues a call to action for higher education to rethink its current learning model in preparation for a close future in which artificial intelligence integrates into every aspect of our lives, leaving behind a path of destruction for thousands of jobs as we know them today, as many as 40% in the next 15 years. From a perspective using two forms of thinking, convergent and divergent thinking, we can guess which jobs will likely have a bleak future. Convergent thinking, he describes, requires an individual to focus on finding a single solution, whereas divergent thinking requires creative generation of multiple responses in a free form of ideas. He adds, divergent thinking is often associated with playfulness, curiosity, and willingness to take risks. In this new learning model, education must cultivate creativity. Reading, writing, and arithmetic are literacies taught since the 17th century in this country. New literacies, however, are now required and include technology literacy, data literacy, and human literacy, all undergirded by cognitive capacities involving critical thinking, systems thinking, entrepreneurship, and cultural agility. Construction of this makerspace will serve as a place where teaching, learning, and innovation collide, and the outcome can be seen and touched. This dynamic learning space will be filled with small and large, low-tech and high-tech tools and machinery available to all Maricopa students, staff, faculty, and our community to gather and to share ideas, to learn, to think, to design, to create, to be entrepreneurial, to change internally, and quite possibly the world around them. The Makerspace will serve as a venue to unleash this new learning model, helping students to become divergent learners, armed with new literacies to achieve their goals and to ensure that they are robot-proof in an AI omnipresent future. I thank you for your consideration and support, and now ask Kristen Goopser to provide a short presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. Dr. Thor, members of the board, Dr. Harper-Marinick, thank you for the opportunity to share with you funding adjustments for the Makerspace project. Work began on this pioneering project in 2014, and since that time, the vision has not changed. Community students and faculty interests remain strong, and the emphasis on recruitment and retention is more important than ever. We have engaged with the expert architecture firm Gensler and have spent the past 5 months on a design development process to deliver a project that will define a culture of innovation and learning at Maricopa and in the higher education ecosystem of downtown Phoenix. As you can see, a sustainable and authentic facility will welcome students, entrepreneurs, and the business community. In the 18 months since the project was approved, we have come upon additional cost considerations, many outside of our control. These include inflation beyond previous expectations, which involve material price increases, labor shortages, and potential tariffs, contingencies for hard bid construction procurement as required under new federal regulations for the EDA, structural reinforcements, as well as the location of mechanical systems on the roof, increasing the available floor area for larger, better equipped shops, support spaces, and the addition of rentable project bays. Enhancements involving IT, AV, security, acoustical needs, and many others. I'm frozen. There we go. It's important to note that this is a public-private partnership, and with an $8 million budget, the project remains 50% externally funded, in addition to in-kind commitments. This is a low-risk endeavor with a high likelihood of every district dollar invested being returned. This slide is showing an $8 million project. All the offerings you see are tools, equipment, and programming that students, our partners, and the community have asked for. 2 student and community surveys have been conducted. The first one showing that 91% of respondents were somewhat to very likely to access the space. The second showed that 80% of respondents want to attend a workshop at the space and learn a new skill. 75% want to prototype, 3D print, and laser cut. Even if 10% of Maricopa students use the space, that is significant utilization. This slide shows a $6 million project and is a visual representation of what would be lost. Everything shrinks. There's reduced space, reduced equipment, less diversity of equipment offered, and lower user capacity. All of this equals fewer memberships. This is a comparison difference showing in the scope between an $8 million and a $6 million project. This is not final as no decisions have been made, but it shows vulnerabilities. The workshops are not independent of each other. The connectivity between the spaces, equipment, and uses is intertwined, supporting the full scope. Reduction in the variety of workshops and equipment results in lost opportunity to attract members and students. There's a decline in the number of people who can be in the space at any given time, and a reduction in membership and associated revenue. This chart is a reflection of the pro forma that has been provided. The conservative estimates show that revenue and expenses are in line, and that sponsorships do not make or break the success of the project. This co-membership and list of sponsor prospects. On the left-hand column, the co-membership organizations or organizations that we have met with, many of which we also have letters of commitment. These are many membership organizations today, and they're interested in being partners with us to provide co-membership opportunities to the Makerspace. The middle column and the right column are sponsor prospects, with the final scope of the project driving the number of sponsorships and the value of those sponsorships. And with that, I want to thank you again for the time and for your continued support.
Thank you. Are there any questions from board members? Mrs. McGrath.
Thank you. You have a 1/3 increase in money here. I thought that the $6 million was way too much to begin with. I don't understand what you're talking about when you're shrinking the space with only the $6 million. If $6 million could only be only, what are you talking about? Are you talking about expanding the building? Are you talking about only developing part of it? What did that map mean when you showed a smaller space with a $6 million investment?
It was to show a graphical representation of the potential loss of dollars to fund the project at full cost.
So it's a map that wasn't a map. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
It's just
correct. Right.
More like a graph.
Correct.
I cannot imagine why you come up with 1/3 a request for 1/3 more money. This project, I don't think will attract any students from any of our campuses. It's in downtown Phoenix. There's no parking there. It is not, you can't even drive in and drop material off, which people generally do when they go to these places. And it's just absolutely beyond me why you aren't thinking of the taxpayers in this event. Our school is owned and funded by the taxpayers. I cannot imagine why you want to put this burden on them for a project that will not be accessed by our students. You have in there that you're going to be charging memberships, walk-ins. Why should our taxpayers be paying for that? You're going to have students from ASU, if you have any students there, because they're the only people that have campus close to you. It's just absolutely beyond me why you want to spend so much money on a project that I don't think will possibly succeed. I don't think there are any maker spaces in a situation like this that do succeed. And the ones that have failed have had parking so far. This is just absolutely beyond me why you keep persisting in spending so much of our taxpayer money on this project.
Mrs. Nguyen.
My question is regarding Proposition 301. It shows $3 million. Has that money already been committed to us because that is due to sunset in 2020? And my concern is if that sunsets and this isn't fulfilled, how are you going to make up that $3 million?
Dr. Thor, Mrs. Nguyen, members of the board, yes, that money is available now. and committed to the project if approved.
Mrs. Sullivan.
So I asked the question at the agenda review, could you tell us what would happen if we had to essentially maintain the current funding commitment without an increase? So I appreciate your visual representation as well as the articulation that you did in the sponsorship membership piece. I worked downtown for so many years. And I actually was housed in the Phoenix College downtown building for those 20 years. With that, certainly I was there to watch downtown evolve into a really vibrant learning community that appeals not just to the folks that used to be there, but has attracted investors that are individuals as well as businesses, that has brought learning in new ways to the area that impacts those businesses, that appeals to students of all ages for their learning. And I frankly find this a wonderful addition to the learning and development opportunities that exist in concert with all of those potential partners in the area. I applaud you for your vision. I believe that when we're evaluating dollars of investment from taxpayers, that we also have a responsibility to think about what is the future for those taxpayers. Many of the people that I know who have chosen to move downtown, for example, are investing millions of dollars not only in their new homes, in the high-rises, but they're participating in the learning environment that is thriving in that area. I believe certainly with perhaps the support of the foundation, though I don't mean to speak for them, that they could help you generate some of that additional opportunity in membership and sponsorships, just thinking outside of the box, maybe just a little bit. But going back to the taxpayer, and I appreciate Ms. McGrath's comment, but I frankly disagree. I am going to support the suggestion of a commitment of more dollars. I believe if you can move quickly, you will have available the $3 million from Proposition 301 without its sunset. I think that over time we could see an ROI, and I do believe it will attract new learners. As I think about Galvanize, people thought that was an off-the-wall suggestion. No one's going to come down there who's going to benefit from the space. Entrepreneurs, young people are going to go. They are running Galvanize. They have run away with it, and they are attracting students, many of whom participate in our community college system. And I have no doubt that with the opportunities here, that it will reinvigorate the opportunities of students to participate in some of these learnings. And I guess I've said enough, but congratulations on the vision that you're bringing to the downtown space and to the students.
Dr. Narini?
As someone who lives downtown, I'm really excited by the proposition of this. I understand that 5th and Van Buren is right off of Grand Avenue that runs straight up all the way to Surprise and beyond. I know that the light rail is just less than 5 blocks away. All the bus station, the bus stops, and things all converge down there, so it's easy to get to, and for students, and parking I'm not sure would be too much of an issue. I know we quote quite often about the number of ASU students who are also Maricopa Community College students who's taking classes. So I don't think just because ASU's there, they're not mutually exclusive. Just because they're ASU students doesn't mean they can't be Maricopa Community College students. As far as the taxpayers and the tax base, I have a feeling that this is going to raise property values in the area, which is going to increase our revenue and increase our opportunities. I think that growing up downtown, seeing what's happened downtown, it's really thrilling to see, to be a part of that synergy. And I think the idea of Makerspace is unique, and it's bold, and I have seen it being successful in other communities. So I commend what you're doing, and I think it's wonderful. Thanks.
I have an additional question, if I may.
Mrs. McGrath.
Thank you. You give the reasons why the costs are going up, and one of them is Archaeological abatement? What in the world is archaeological abatement? I've never heard of that.
Yes, Dr. Thor, members of the board, Mrs. McGrath, thank you for your question. Because the project has federal funding associated with it, there are requirements when you use federal dollars that we have to do some archaeological testing to make sure that there aren't any sacred burial grounds or anything under the building. If there are, we are charged with removing those before we do any major ground disturbing activities.
So have you started that activity already?
Yes, the archaeological assessment has been completed.
And what was the outcome?
There was one finding of a small animal that has been removed and returned to its Native American community.
You felt it was buried by the Native American community and the...
Yes, that's the professional opinion of the archaeologist.
Thank you.
All right, if there are no other questions, this item is for action later on our agenda. However, I'll repeat what I've said every time we have discussed the Makerspace. I think you're doing exactly what the board is asking the colleges to do, and that's giving us projects that are collaborative, that are entrepreneurial, that are innovative, and seek alternative revenue sources. So I'm still hanging in. Thank you.
Dr. Thor, thank you. Members of the board, thank you.
We're now at Citizens Interim. This is the opportunity for members of the public to address the governing board about items that are not on the agenda for discussion today. In compliance with the open meeting law, the governing board will neither discuss nor take action on issues raised during this portion of the agenda. Each speaker is asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes. We have 5 speakers. The first one is Brenda Nelson.
President Thor, members of the board, Dr. Harper-Marinick, CEC and guests, my name is Brenda Nelson, and I'm a classified staff member of Glendale Community College and have worked there for over 19 years. Thank you for giving Maricopa classified staff the opportunity to recreate a representative body per the resolution that you have created and approved on January 22nd. The last several years without representation have been demoralizing to staff. We lost our structure, some of our rights, and most importantly, our voice when the Classified Staff Council was disbanded in 2017. Classified staff are vital to the success of Maricopa colleges, and we play a key role in helping our students achieve their goals and their dreams. We believe in and work for our institution's visions and missions and learning outcomes. We keep the lights on, we scrub the floors, we pay the bills, support technology, we advise students, and we help them get financial aid. We help our students achieve everything they need to walk across the stage at commencement. We ensure our faculty and administrators have what they need and get to where they need to be to teach classes and to hold meetings to govern the colleges. We want and deserve a seat at the table. We care deeply about Maricopa colleges, our students, colleagues, and frankly, our jobs and our careers. We want to participate and share in decision-making and shared governance in the institution that we've devoted many years and hours of our lives to. We consider the colleges our homes, filled with families. I want you to know that classified staff really appreciates the opportunity that you gave us in January, and we're running with it. Many of us are working together to gather input and develop proposals for our representative body and structure. We're holding a dialogue day this Thursday, February 28th, to bring all classified staff together to provide some input. I'll admit it's a daunting task to try to develop a structure for 10 colleges, 2 skill centers, and a large and diverse workforce in the 90 days that was prescribed by the January resolution. Additionally, we need clarification on the resolution timeline. It encourages staff to identify a representative structure within 90 days, keeping in mind that we don't have a structure at the moment, while directing the Chancellor to form the constituency collaboration team with representatives from all of the groups selected by representative bodies in 45 days. So we'd like a little bit of clarification on the CCT formation and timeline. Classified staff also believe we should vote and decide on our structure and representation. We want active participation. We're here and we're working to achieve the goals that you gave us in the resolution. And finally, a wonderful result of all of this is how it has brought faculty and staff closer together. We understand and appreciate how much we rely on each other and our students. We stand arm in arm, and to quote a faculty colleague, we are many voices with one mission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Richard Zuckerman.
President Thor, members of the board, Chancellor Harper Marinick, my name's Richard Zuckerman. I've been a student at the Maricopa County Community College District colleges for about 4 years now. The Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, FIRE, acronym, organization, concludes that nearly 9 out of 10 U.S. colleges and universities restrict the right to freedom of speech. I can give you a few examples of my own. Gateway Community College and President Gonzalez, who doesn't seem to want to do anything about it. The regulations require a student disciplinary hearing. I didn't get a student disciplinary. I got a letter from Vice President, was it Dr. Amy Diaz, interim VPAA, saying she doesn't like some of the things I've been saying and doing on the campus, and that I may not enter the campus unless I call her office and get the okay. I filed an appeal with Mr. Gonzalez. Remember me, Mr. Gonzalez? Remember a few years ago? You don't remember, do you? Okay. So Mr. Gonzalez just sent it back to the pitcher, saying that resolve it. He must have been too busy with wanting people to pay $6 million for their something they already have a Maricopa Skills Center. I don't see why they don't just fix that up if it's any worse. All right, so now moving on with this ACLU brief, late 2018, they wrote a brief to the U.S. Supreme Court. And they said, in Healy versus James, 1972, the precedents of this court leave no room for the view that because of the acknowledged need for order, First Amendment protections should apply with less force on college campuses than in the community at large. In other words, just because it's on a community college and you don't like my speech, assuming I did something, I don't even know, she doesn't even give me any reasons, or there's no evidence, I get no discovery, no hearing, all I get is a letter saying you may not appear on this college unless you call my office first. So besides this case Healy, this is Healy versus James in 1972, U.S. Supreme Court. Papish, P-A-P-I-S-H versus Board of Curators of University of Missouri, 1973. The mere dissemination of ideas, no matter how offensive to good taste, on a state university campus may not be shut off in the name of conventions of decency.
Mr. Zuckerman,
Yes,
your time is up. If you could wrap up for us, please.
Yes, I faxed you people the letter that I sent. The police don't know when the discipline ends from a previous discipline, so they hassled me. I didn't get a disciplinary hearing in that case. Now, do you think maybe you people can establish a policy requiring the police to have easy access to the end of a previous student discipline so that they don't get to harass? They almost arrested me because I refused to produce my license. I showed them my ID, my student ID. Yeah, maybe you'll do something about it there. Get a little more respect, maybe. And I won't testify again to the state legislature not to give you funding because you don't respect students' rights. Why have the regulations giving us student rights if you're not going to follow them? I don't understand. Here's my letter. Do you think anybody might be interested in reading it?
You may submit your letter, and thank you very much.
Who do I send? Who do I give it to? Who? Oh, yeah.
Our next speaker is David Weaver.
President Thor, Governing Board members, Chancellor Mernick, Harper Mernick, and CEC guests, Donna. I'm happy to be here. This is the end of my 38th year teaching in Maricopa. I retired from Chandler Gilbert in 2014, and I'm physics faculty emeritus. And then I did not do retirement very well like my wife, theater faculty emeritus from Scottsdale Community College, Kim Williamson. She does it great. So after a year, I had the opportunity to go out to Estrella Mountain Community College and do a sabbatical replacement. And at the end of that, I asked Ernie, is there anything else you need done? And there was a TACT grant that had money for a makerspace. And so they asked me to put together a makerspace. And instead of growing at the few percent, 10%, maybe 15% student usage of it, we've had over 1,000% increase in student usage. And following me, I have two of the students that were part of the team that actually got the Estrella Mountain Community College Innovation of the Year last year for the Makerspace. I've been working with Kristen on the Maricopa Makerspace, and it's something that I think that we had a summer institute last summer out at Estrella where we had faculty from most of the colleges out there to do human-centered design kind of things, just to learn how to start thinking about how you can apply project-based learning and how it really is the fourth pillar we heard about earlier, that it's critical that they get some very specific application kinds of things. So I'm here to speak in favor of the notion that making should be a part of Maricopa's future in every way that we can. Currently, Estrella is the only campus that has a general usage makerspace. So the Maricopa one, and we have heard that it's very close to light rail. There's all kinds of ways that students can get to it. I doubt Estrella students would go there much because we got a pretty cool place right now, and we're in the planning of building a new building where the makerspace is moving into. So I fully support it. I continued to work with Kristen on the actual working with the architects and builders, and we're working together on who it is that will go into the space as employees. So I think it's a wonderful chance to do that. So next, Tyler Burrow, who is one of our students that's transferred to ASU, but he's also an employee in the space, is going to talk some about his experience in the space.
Thank you, Dr. Weaver. Tyler Burrow.
President Thor, members of the board, thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm Tyler Burrow. To give you a little bit of a background, I was born and raised here in Arizona. When I was 17, I left my home to go join the United States Navy. I was a nuclear electrician aboard the submarine USS Louisiana, and if you know anything about the training program for that, it is rather intensive, and there's a lot of knowledge and a lot of information that needs to be gained in the process of becoming a nuke. I can say without a doubt that my experience working in the makerspace and being a student in the makerspace has been the most informative and the most knowledge gaining and helpful for my critical thinking and problem solving skills that I've ever had. I've been able to retain knowledge and skills that I haven't been able to match that kind of level of learning at any point in my life. The sheer amount of just problems, whether they be caused by equipment or my own exploration of that equipment, it has given me the ability to solve more than just, well, what is the circuit board doing, and how is it broken and how can I fix it? It's allowed me to apply these problem-solving skills to other aspects of my life, including my interpersonal relationships, public speaking, given that I'm here in front of you now, and just the ability to study better. It has improved my ability to study, because that's always been an issue for me. But now, knowing how to learn, understanding how my brain works, and sort of meta thinking around this, I attribute this to the Makerspace and the many varied opportunities to apply problem solving and troubleshooting. I'll leave my comments at that and introduce my coworker and friend, Anthony Reitz.
Thank you. Mr. Reitz?
Hello, President Thor, members of the board. Thank you for allowing me to speak in front of you yet again. A little bit of background about me. I've had way more opportunities come my way via the Makerspace. I have been the NASA Ascend team lead for Estrella Mountain Community College for a year straight. I am the award recipient for the NASA Aerospace Community College Scholars Program, as well as the current one of the current leads for the L-Space program at ASU, which is the Lucy Student Pipeline and Competency Enabler. A lot of these, all of these opportunities actually have come to me through the Makerspace and its constituents, all the people that work in there and work together. It's been a really blessed opportunity. I'd like to talk to you about three things that I think that our Makerspace really exemplifies, and that's community, innovation, and the future. To start with the community portion, a big thing that we do is create models that we go out into the community and show students in high schools and grade schools from an early age, getting them started. It's a huge part, because what is the community made of? It's made of soon-to-be doctors, engineers, lawyers, problem solvers of the future. So bringing them our problems today is going to take the load off when they have to solve the problems of tomorrow. Next, innovation. We were nominated for EMCC's 2018 Innovation of the Year, and we won it for our school and nominated for the district as well, which was a great honor. And so I don't know if that doesn't scream innovation, I don't know what does. We get to do a lot of really cool things, building machines. Tyler's fantastic at that. We get to do a lot of design, 3D scanning, working with community partners. All of these people come to the Makerspace, not just students. So as far as the innovation goes, it's definitely there. And lastly, to touch on the future. The future is hard to predict, but something from Dr. Johnstone's speech or his presentation really stood out to me, and it was in section 4 of his Guided Pathways program. And it said that the main objective of that was field-relevant experiential learning. And if that's not the key to our future, I don't know what is. I know myself and Tyler have a bright future in engineering, given some of the programs that we're a part of. I imagine we're going to be some senior level people, and I look forward to that. But I can definitely say that without these given experiences and experience in general, that I would not hire somebody to make my car, build bridges for me, build schools that my children are going to go to without these relevant experiences. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks to both of the students for sharing your experiences. We are now at the consideration of the consent agenda. All items with an asterisk are consent matters unless they are removed from the consent agenda at this time. Do any board members or the Chancellor wish to remove any items from the consent agenda? Dr. Narini?
I'd like to remove 11.8.
11.8. Are there any others? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda minus 11.8, approve the proposed fee changes for fiscal year 1920?
So move. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes 7-0. We now move to 11.8, proposed changes for fiscal year 2019-20 budget. Dr. Narini, do you have a question or a comment?
I do, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Hibbs for indulging me with a lot of questions I had on the whole fee process and the fees that are being proposed. So I really appreciate that, and the team that worked with him to get all those answers for me. That was great. Next, I wanted to, in some of those answers, one of the answers was to the Dental Assisting 4 program, the DAE 256. They have an outreach program that sounds phenomenal. They reach out to the community to provide dental assistance, dental care, and if we could get some of those presentations to the board meeting, I think that would be wonderful to see some of the things that they're doing out there. And also, I wanted to commend Rio Salado for their efforts to lower some of the fees that they put forth initially, and then they came back after a couple revisions, and a lot of those were lowered. So I really appreciate what they did with that. But some of the questions I had was on let's see, page 43. It is with Estrella Mountain Community College. There is an asterisk at the top for MAT 298AA, 298AB, and 298AC. And the proposed fee has an asterisk, and the asterisk seems to be a footnote that says effective immediately upon governing board approval. So I don't know if we pass that, if it goes into effect now, if that's retroactive to what's already the students who are already enrolled in those classes, or I just need some clarification on that.
Chancellor?
Thank you, Dr. Thor. Dr. Narini, I will ask Vice President Heather Weber in case she has an answer for that question.
Thank you, Chancellor, Mr. Narini, members of the board. Effective immediately, I'm not sure why that asterisk would be there because students would have been already enrolled in this semester. Therefore, it would have been effective moving in fall when the schedule opens up. So I would need to take it back and look at that, but it shouldn't be effective for the spring 2019 semester.
Thank you. The next question I had was, I think it's on page 30. And this is Mesa Community College, the MUC 145 Recording Studio Business Operations. Is that, how many credits is that course?
Mr. Narini, that'd be 2 credit hours.
2 credits. And so that meets once a week for how many weeks?
Once a week.
Okay.
Once a week for 16 weeks.
Okay, yeah, well, because when I looked up on the thing, I thought it looked like it met only 8 weeks. And what I'm curious about is if it meets 8 weeks and 7 of those weeks are out visiting recording studios, and the fee is to pay the speakers at the recording studios and the recording studio time, is it how common is it that we pay guest speakers to present to our classes?
It's actually very common to have guest speakers come in, depending upon obviously their expertise and the ability for us to be able to have those fees to pay speakers.
To pay for those speakers.
Yeah.
Okay, so it meets 7 times with. It looks, from what I was reading, it looks like they go out to the recording studios and they meet with these folks 7 times. I guess I'm confused if they're out there with the guest speakers presenting to the students and their networking and that sort of thing. The instruction of the class, I guess I'm confused with. Is it by the instructor or by the guest speakers?
It's not my program.
Okay.
If I may assist.
Keith, can you go to the podium, please? The mic is live.
Hi, good evening. Good evening, board and everybody else. I'm Keith Hefner. I work at Mesa Community College in the music department. The questions that you're asking is about a course that's in the music business program, which is not my area, but I know a little bit about that particular course. So there is an instructor. And I'm not sure what the course fee is. So
It looks like it's currently at $0, proposed $55.
okay. So my assumption would be that if the course has evolved to a point where when the students go and visit a recording studio, that there's some business person, part of music business. So if there's a person that can speak to, what the studio is about, what their experience is, that would probably cover enough speakers, because the course I think is limited to about 15 or 16 possibly.
16 students, yeah.
Yeah. So that is my assumption, not being the program director for the music business program there, but that would be my assumption. And it is taught by an adjunct, so it would be a combination of the adjunct's instruction, and then that would be supported and by probably these guest speakers. It's probably evolved. We've had the course for a couple of years now. That's my assumption. I hope that helps a little bit.
Thank you.
And I'd be happy to pull that information and get it to all the board members.
Thank you. Thank you. Last, in looking at these fees, and again, I work closely with students, and students, it's one of their main complaints. Do we have a policy, or is there a policy in place for students to request, let's see if I understand it right, the students register for the classes, they can't register until they paid their tuition and they paid their fees. Is that right?
Well, yeah, generally, yes.
Okay. And so I guess the question is, do we have a policy in place so that the students can request refunds of those fees if they're not applicable to them? And I guess the point I'm getting to is several of these fees are for equipment, and I understand that. And I understand it's very important that the students have the proper equipment. For example, there's a $1,300 for fee for a computer, another $1,800 for a computer, some HVAC has tools and that sort of thing. And I'm just wondering if a student comes in with the equipment that they need, if they're somebody already in the workforce and they have the equipment that they need, is there a way that they can, and the professor approves of the equipment that they have, is there a way to request that fee to be refunded?
That is a good question, and apparently no one seems to know the answer, so we will look at the policies and we'll let the board know. Do you know?
Yeah, my name is Pamela Felix. I work
Wait
in
a
the fiscal.
minute. Start at the mic.
President Thor and governing board members. My name is Pamela Felix. I work in the fiscal department at Mesa Community College. And to answer Mr. Narini's question is that when the course fees are established, they look at the tools that the students are going to require. Now, for like the HVAC and a lot of the nursing and specific programs, they require industry-specific items. So sometimes, even though they can get it out cheaper, they might be defective and or be missing parts. So it's important that the student does get exactly what the professor asks.
Okay. Yeah, and I appreciate that. Oh, go ahead.
President Thor, may I add to this, please?
Please.
Mr. Narini, part of your comments had to do with this is equipment. What I would point out is that the course fees do not cover equipment unless the the student takes that equipment with them at the end of the course. So they're really, in a sense, purchasing the equipment.
Yeah, and I understand that, and that's part of the point. One of the examples I had is, for example, the LOPES that in the dental assistance program. Let's say, for example, I'm a student in the dental assistance program. I purchase the equipment because it's mine now, because it's part of the fee. And for whatever reason, I drop out of the program. And my friend here is signing up for the program the next year. And I have perfectly good equipment that I no longer need because I'm no longer in the program. And I want to sell it to him for $100 instead of the $1,300. And as long as the professor looks at that and says, yes, everything's in working order, it's perfectly fine, can that happen? Because that'll benefit me as a person who's no longer in the program, who no longer needs the equipment. And it will benefit the other student who needs the equipment and will be stepping into the program. And again, it's very important that the professors have the final say on. I mean, I just want to know if there's a policy in place that we can have a form the professors can sign off on that they can request a refund for.
So there is a course fee policy, like when it comes to purchasing, and when we use course fees, it's only for tangible items that the students actually use in the classroom. Mm-hmm. So ideally, we're not allowed to buy any like capital items or anything that is supposed to be provided by the school for the specific course. The tangible items that we are given to students are like supplies, like for the culinary program, all the food that is used to produce for that specific day is purchased with those course fees. Tools such as specific tools for dental hygiene, those are required. Those are outside of the course fee. So the students are required to buy their own specific tools. And in your example, they are allowed to sell them to other students if they're done. But the course fees are specifically for the tangible items that are being used in the classroom.
Thank you. Because according to the fee. The course requests that they're doing, it sounds like, has the policy changed? Because with the course fees, they are getting a computer, they are getting the LOPES, they are getting the tools as part of the fees, according to the fee breakdown.
Mr. Hibbs.
President Thor, members of the board, the course fees are used for things that are consumed during the course or that the student walks away with. Equipment that is used in more than one semester in a course is actually part of our budget process and will be funded by the board. We have received requests from all the colleges for equipment for their courses, so that's not what's covered in here. I don't know if I made that clear.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because all I guess I'm asking is there a process by which a student can request a refund for a fee? And with whatever documentations are required, whatever policies we put in place, that if they meet X, Y, and Z, they're eligible to apply for a refund, whether it's for equipment or for something else.
Dr. Thor, members, I'm not aware of any such policy at this point. I don't know, and the presidents would have a better idea than I would, but I see most of them shaking their heads as well, so I don't believe there is, but it is certainly something that we can take a look at.
Thank you.
Thank you. I neglected to get a motion and a second for this item. Would someone like to move 11.8?
I move 11.8.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 7-0. We now move to non-consent items. 12.1, approve the budget increase and funding adjustments to the Makerspace remodel project.
I call for a roll call vote.
I need a motion and a second, please.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the budget increase and funding adjustments to the Makerspace.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. There's been a call for a roll call vote.
A discussion first?
Please. Mr. Sar?
Yeah, I go back to day one on this project, and I still say the same thing. I am fully in favor of Makerspace. I think Estrella Mountains program is a great example of a successful Makerspace where others in the valley that have attempted this project have failed. So I give a lot of credit to those people out there, especially our friends in the department that have made that successful. Although their investment out there, knowing that they had a building, was just a few $100,000. We're talking about $8 million in this project. I've never been opposed to Makerspace in itself, but I've always opposed the location that this one is being projected to locate. It's downtown Phoenix. I get it's just off. It's 5 blocks from light rail. It doesn't have any on-site parking. What parking we have is in a parking ramp a block away that's only guaranteed for 5 years and an $8 million investment without that kind of longer-term guarantee to me just is one of many reasons I've opposed this location for this project. It's a building that probably would be a lot better off if we tore it down and started a new building to accommodate this, but if we're going to do that, then let's put it in a location that has all the requirements that we've always maintained for community colleges, which is ample parking, free parking, and access to more than just the equipment and so forth that's in the Makerspace. We have programs at all of our colleges that could use it, but I don't feel it's going to be successful in the location that it's at. I do understand Gateway has limited space, but I would think that the money that would be saved by moving this particular project to the Gateway campus would be far greater, a far greater project for our students than what is being proposed here. So as I've always done, I'll oppose the increase in this project as well.
Any other comments or questions? If not, Dr. Narini.
I like to think that we're currently in kind of in a culture of no, and I'd like to get to a culture of yes. I imagine what they would have said, what this folks would have said if 150 years ago they said we're going to chop down thousands of trees, and then we're going to plant them across the country, and we're going to run wires across those poles so that we can talk from New York to LA with little bits of code. And what would they have said then? That's unsustainable. It's not going to make any sense. How are we going to make any money out of that? And so here we have an opportunity to do something bold and something exciting and something that is going to generate some revenue. It is going to generate some synergy in downtown and throughout the valley. And so because of that, I think we can find 100 reasons why to say no, but I think this is one good reason to say yes.
Mrs. Sullivan and then Mrs. Wynn.
So I have a silly example. All of you know that, not all of you, most of you know that I have a daughter who is a doctor. She's a surgeon. She's a resident. She attended school at the U of A, medical school downtown. When she started there, they didn't have a parking lot. She found herself parking at a friend's house of a condo 3 blocks away and then walking to school classes. That certainly changed now because of the idea that maybe the students in the end did need a parking lot, so there's a lot of activity there. But speaking specifically of the space, she wanted to develop a tool that would help her in her surgeries for vascular clamping. God forbid her mother and father had no idea what that would be like. So she figured out a way at home, working with all sorts of things, to try to create a tool. It took her a long time. When I was talking at home about the potential of this, I asked her, I said, if you had had this opportunity to attend a space where you could think about creating a tool that would benefit you in the operating room, would you have taken advantage of that? Granted, she's not a community college student, but she is a student. She said, absolutely. I think that there are burgeoning opportunities downtown, whether it's affiliated with medical schools or whether it's students, that are exciting. And I really believe that people that we can't imagine who would use that space would certainly find an opportunity to do that. By the way, she did create the tool. She did use it, but it took her far longer unless she could have explored the opportunities for freedom and innovation and support and guidance And I expect that there are many people like her, whether they're in high school trying to imagine things, dual enrollment students, and others who would really benefit from the downtown location. Work down there near this space, it's all developing. I think it has huge futures. That's what I wanted to offer.
Mrs. Nguyen?
In the reasons for the increase, you say that there has been structural complications requiring additional replacement and internal reinforcement, as well as relocation of mechanical equipment, also asbestos and archaeological abatement, which had explained to us earlier. For $6 million, we get craft event, prototyping electronics, machine shop, welding, and glass. For an additional $2 million, we get project rooms, conference rooms, classrooms, ceramics, wood shop, and textiles. I agree that this Makerspace is a great thing, but not for that price, so I'll be voting against it.
Any other comments or questions? There's a request for a roll call vote. Mr. Hendricks?
No.
Dr. Narini?
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Sarr?
No.
Mrs. McGrath?
Nay.
Mrs. Nguyen?
No.
And I vote yes. The motion fails 4-3. We now have item 12.2, approving the proposed tuition and fees for fiscal year 2019-20. I need a motion and a second, please.
I move that we approve the proposed tuition and fees for fiscal year 1920.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes 7-0. Next, we have a first read. I'm getting there. Amending Governing Board Policy 4.5 regarding organizational meeting and board officer elections. The proposed revision clarifies that presidents are elected at the annual meeting, presidents and secretary are elected at the annual meeting for 1 year only unless re-elected during the subsequent annual meeting. Any comments or questions? Okay, it'll be back next month for action. Information items 14.1, employment. Any comments or questions? Seeing none. Monitoring reports 15.1, the burn report. Any comments or questions? All right, that brings us to governing board reports. Mr. Hendricks?
No report.
Dr. Narini?
Yeah, a few things. We had a great time in DC at the ACCT conference. Went to the new trustees workshops and learned quite a bit. Participated in the Latino caucus, which was exciting. Been working a little bit with dual enrollment, trying to get dual enrollment squared away, helping make it a much smoother transition from for high school and students to do dual enrollment with the community colleges. Want to thank Dr. Haney and Travis Huber, the student government president over at MCC, for inviting me to campus and showing me around. It was had a wonderful walkthrough about what the registration process is all about. So I got a firsthand feel of what the students go through, and it's really exciting what's going on at MCC. Had a chance to meet with Alfred Chavez, the MECHA advisor from MCC, where I was a member once upon a time. Dr. Peterson at Chancellor Gilbert had a great show around. The crew kind of walked around and was there at each stop to give me a little presentation on what I was seeing. Dr. Gonzalez had a few students to speak with me and his team when I went to go visit them, and that was a wonderful time. And Ms. Haynes at Scottsdale Community College, working with Scottsdale and Spot 127 to try to get some students out to see the film and TV studios out there. So it was I'm looking forward to that myself, just to take them out there to see them. But so far it's been great getting out to campuses, meeting the students, meeting the staff. It's been fun.
Mrs. Sullivan?
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you to all of you for the great welcome and guidance that you are supplying to me as a new board member. The one thing I learned at the new trustee academy in DC that was all-day affair, well, maybe that's a poor choice of words, an all-day learning, was that there's a lot to learn and that this is complicated, and to think that I know anything means that I really don't know anything. So with your support and your reaching out, you are teaching me quite a bit, and I hope that doesn't stop. And for those of you with whom I have not caught up with yet, I plan to. So thank you for, again, your many offerings, and I wanted to say that. Also, I've been very impressed with the staff, the classified staff that I meet on each campus. And the other thing of note is how clean and together each campus is. I had an opportunity the other day to visit Gateway and experience the campus, had a lunch in the cafeteria. The food was good. I think I had, it was Pozole Day, so Tuesday Pozole. It was really good, so thanks for that. The other pieces that I've been doing, also when we were in DC, we attended, besides meeting with our Arizona congressional delegation, we attended a meeting at the Department of Education and the Department of Labor. And the one consistent message from both of them is how eager they are to continue to work with the community college, and is particularly in Maricopa, in collaborative models of teaching and learning leading to quality employment. So I think that will continue to be on our radar. And again, people know of Maricopa community colleges when you walk into a meeting with them, and I found that both, I appreciated it, but also informative. Also, I sit on the County Workforce Development Board Performance Outcomes Committee. I used to be on the board, but resigned, and they kept me on at Performance Outcomes. And one of my interests there is, as we're talking about aligning the outcomes for the community colleges in concert with what we're experiencing at the county at the workforce development level. So that's going to be continuing work that I'm doing. Also, there's a lot of school districts out and around who are thinking of bonds, and how in that conversation they're also linking to the community colleges, and I'll be sitting on one of those. Just by social happenstance, I meet with a lot of folks in the community, quality comments, and we're on their agenda. There's some policy work I know that's occurring with positive outcomes, we hope, for the community college district. And there's so much more, but thank you very much.
Mrs. Sullivan? I'm sorry, I'm looking right at you, Mrs. Nguyen.
I have no report, thank you.
Mrs. McGrath?
Very briefly, I'd like to say that the reason our transfer program works so extremely well is because in the 1990s, when I was in the state legislature, we had many parents coming to us and complaining because their students had gone to a community college, and then they had transferred to one of our 3-4-year universities, and their credits were not being accepted, and they were extremely upset about this. So we did what the legislature always does. We tried very hard to solve the problem, and we told the universities, you will accept these credits. And we told the community colleges, you're going to beef up your program so that your credits are university level and acceptable. And 2 years ago, I got to attend the 20th anniversary celebration of that transfer program, and that's the reason the transfer program works here in Arizona, where it doesn't work so very well in other states. You heard the gentleman testify to that, and I'm just very happy to say that we do it better in Arizona. Thank you, President Thor.
Mr. Saar? On the consent agenda tonight was the restoration of the governing board committee. So I would like to announce that the chair of the reestablished policy committee will be Mr. Sarr. The chair of the business and budget and finance committee is Mrs. Sullivan. And the chair of the charter schools committee is Dr. Narini. Our next meeting is March 26, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. At this time, I'll entertain a motion and a second to adjourn. Come on, somebody.
Motion to adjourn? We're having so much fun.
Yes. I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
We're adjourned.